Thanks for staying with us. A video of an apparent racist incident at Stellenbosch University is doing the rounds on social media, much to the outrage of many. The video shows a white student peeing on a black student's study material as well as his other belongings. Now, the incident is believed to have taken place at the weekend. Stellenbosch University says it has suspended the student but is not ruling out further action. We are going to be speaking to the university's SRC chair, Viwe Kobokana, as well as Dr. Makhetha, who is the Senior Director of Student Affairs at the university. And just before we get them on the line for you, there's also a statement that the university has released talking about how the alleged perpetrator was suspended from the university today, and talking about how they are unhappy and they strongly condemn any destructive or discriminatory behavior that infringes on the rights of any students or member of the community when it comes to this particular university. And they also talk about this house, Mare, which is where this particular incident is said to have happened. And I'm trying to get us together if we do have Dr. Choice on the line with us, and I do know that Viwe will also be joining us a little later on. Dr. Choice, if you can hear me, I'll begin with you. What was the university's reaction when you were notified of this video?
Thank you very much. The university was really in shock and surprised what happened at this raise, because there's a real commitment to transformation, and the university actually focused on transformation, even right from the planning at the beginning of this year. And in residences, there's a lot of conversations happening with students to make sure that every student understands that every student counts, that every student needs to experience a sense of belonging. And therefore, when I got this message, I made sure that I called the student who was affected this morning to try and understand how he was feeling and what happened from his side of the story, and also made sure that he is available to have counseling, because I said to him, as much as I could see that he was still traumatized and he was still trying to process what had just happened, but we made sure that he is provided counseling, and it will be continuous as the process of investigation begins, because he had to give a statement as well. It is shocking, because we do not want any student to be exposed to such. And when we got the message, the House Committee of Mare called a house meeting of the whole race to talk about the matter last night, and also to make sure that everybody is committed to transformation, and agreed that it was important for investigation to happen and for the student to be removed from the residence, to make sure that the investigation happens in a conducive environment and for the affected student to feel safe and comfortable.
Dr. Makhetha, this particular residence is said to be by student. I mean, listening to what they've had to say about this particular incident, it appears to be a problem resident for the university, and it looks like this is not an isolated incident. Have you dealt with other cases there before?
We have dealt with a situation in the last 2 years, and in fact, we were binding the residents to be on a transformation journey, because the culture of the race was not satisfactory to the university. As you may know, the university is over 100 years, and there's been those cultures of initiation in the past that were happening in the residence, and we wanted that culture to change, and for the residents to embrace all students. And therefore, for the past 2 years, we've been working with the residents. And yes.
Dr. Makhetha, I'll come to you in just a moment, because it is bigger than initiation. And I'll take you back to 2020, when there was that lived experiences of hidden racism of students of color at historically white universities report that was done, which was also interviewing some of the students at that university and some of the disturbing things that they've had to say. But I do understand that Viwe is now with us and is joining us to speak to us about the students. Viwe, I mean, looking at that particular video and the apparent impunity at which the student is just doing this entire thing. When I was listening to Babalo speaking to SAFM today, he says that when he asked him, why are you doing this? He said, this is what white boys do. And he walked away. Does this signal that this is a usual occurrence at that residence? Is that what you're finding as the SRC?
Thank you so much for having me. This is definitely, I think, just an incident of racial microaggressions, of covert or overt racism. It's not something that's new in a lot of the communities in our university, unfortunately. I think we've tried a lot to put into place mechanisms to ensure that students feel comfortable reporting these incidences. But I think what's very shocking is that students are receiving a certain message from a lack of, I think, assertiveness in actual zero tolerance against racism. I think it's very telling that the student felt comfortable not only urinating in another student's room, but breaking into this room to urinate and then to respond in that way to this fellow student. So I think this is definitely a wake-up call for the institution, that students are receiving the message loud and clear that zero tolerance at times is what's spoken and shared amongst the students, but not necessarily what's practiced. And I think it's very telling that the student thought that they could get away with this, quite frankly.
And Viwe, I'm listening to what you're saying. I mean, students are saying that they're tired of keeping quiet. Now, in 2020, we saw that report that was titled Lived Experiences of Hidden Racism of Students of Color at a Historically White University. This was done by Elena Kamanga. It talks about black students saying that they're ignored, they feel alienated, they feel erased. They also talk about how the culture is such that hidden racism is thriving. Why do you think this behavior is allowed to thrive in that university?
I think, to be quite honest, there's an issue that a student even raised today when there was mobilization this afternoon, which is that, unfortunately, in our institution at many different levels, the demographics of leadership are such that issues of racism aren't always understood. I think it's a very unfortunate situation, but even in our student communities, we have House committee members in our societies, and then you go through even to staff members. It's unfortunate that our university still predominantly is led by white people. And I think at times issues of racism, in as much as, you know, we don't want the burden of dealing with racism to be carried by Black people, but specifically by Black women, I think at times a change in demographics can result in a change in culture, because you're bringing in people who think differently. You bring in people who listen to things differently. You bring in people who've got different insight. And I think that to a great extent is what's lacking in our institution.
Dr. Makhetha, I'm going to move to you. We're almost out of time. Let's talk then about what happens next, because the university in its statement says that it is not ruling out further action. He broke in. This is a crime. He peed on somebody else's, property. This is also damage to property. Are the police going to be involved?
Yes, the police will have to be informed about this case, and the case will have to be opened. Babalo needed to be at the quality unit this afternoon to open a case so that the disciplinary process of the university will have to happen. And we will take all measures necessary to make sure that this matter is dealt with properly. And we are not going to end up with just incident. As the students are saying, we can't be dealing with incident to incident. We have to make sure that even if this is at Hayes-Marais, we have to work with Hayes-Marais to make sure that the culture change. But it's not just Hayes-Marais. We have to work with all residences of the university to make sure that change happens. It cannot be that a student applies to the University of Stellenbosch University and be accepted, and then their humanity is diminished.
One student I was listening to during the protest, Dr. Makhetha, before I come back to you, Viwe, for your closing remarks, talks about how they want him to be expelled by the end of the week. They're not mincing their words. They're talking about even a previous incident in 2018 where a student was expelled for a racist poster. What do you say to this? Are the students going to get their way come the end of the week?
As a university, there has to be consistency. And if we say it's zero tolerance to this kind of behavior, we need to show by our actions and not just messages. And I think Prof. Jerish addressing the students this afternoon, he was also listening to what the students were asking for. But in the afternoon, I was saying it's very important for us to follow the law to the dot so that whatever decision is taken is not reversed by technicalities, but it is actually honored to satisfy the students.
Viwe, I'll give you 10 seconds. We're almost out of time. I mean, there's a lot that is going on in that university. We saw at some point open Stellenbosch. We saw a lot that has been going on in the past. Are you saying that you are confident that you will be able to weather the storm and also make sure that these incidents don't happen again as the SRC?
I think as the SRC, we're definitely going to prioritize that. We're going to push to ensure that the necessary procedures are followed. We're going to push that this issue is dealt with swiftness, but also with thoroughness. But beyond that, we're going to ensure that the systemic issues of racism, of toxic masculinity, of rape culture, of all these other things that constantly rear their head in our institution are finally dealt with. It's been a long time coming, and I really do hope that this is the final wake-up call, because beyond this, I don't know how many wake-up calls Stellenbosch can endure. I don't know what's going to happen beyond this, but I really do hope that this will be a moment for everyone to sit back, introspect, and actually be intentional in the way forward for this institution.
Let me thank both of you for your time. We'll continue to monitor the story because it's really disturbing, and you think about what even happened with the rates fall, for example, in the Free State. So certainly a lot is going on in these universities and needs really a very close watch. That was Viwe Kobokana, Stellenbosch University SRC Chair, and Dr. Choice Makhetha, Senior Director of Student Affairs at Stellenbosch University.
All right.